a good argument.
Yeah.
But. So, look, I don't have a crystal ball.
I know, because
I wish I could tell you you're totally right, but I can't necessarily. I think you make a good argument.
I've previously asked, and you've been there, I've asked you, I've asked the council, when does the 60-day clock start ticking? I got it at the last meeting, these gentlemen were here from the
Right.
council, I said, when does the 60-day clock start ticking?
It's because no
And
one
no one
really,
could answer me.
because the state law doesn't say.
And so what I was told then was, that's for judges to figure out.
Right.
So are we at the point where judges are gonna have to figure this out?
I
Because
think
we're
this-
happy to go have judges figure it out, if that's what we're suggesting at this point.
I think this matter's headed to the courts. It's just no matter what this commission does. It's correct.
I mean, I would like to ask the planning commission, which Valere do you think is being automatically approved tonight? May, June, or July?
I have no idea, to be honest with you.
Well, my concern is exactly what you're describing, is that theoretically, and I'm not by any means suggesting this towards y'all as developers, but theoretically, someone could come in and request a deferral a few times, and then automatically they've got the 60 days.
Absolutely.
And
Correct.
that's the problem that I have with it, because it, you know, essentially, if you do that twice,
You're in the back door.
you're in, right, and so,
I get
I
it.
don't think that was the intent. I think
Maybe
that,
not.
and again, possibly the request for the deferrals as well as the other, in my mind, because it enters into the record, it's in writing in a certain form. It doesn't necessarily, it doesn't say who had to submit that at that point. I think the deferral that we argued at a very lengthy timeframe before, it was more if you, the intent was, you can't call and defer an item off of the agenda without putting it in writing, because then if it didn't make it and they got denied and you weren't present, that was the intent, was that deferral be in writing. Because when we're having these conversations, and it's a fluid conversation and discussion on what's happening across the board, and a deferral is decided on, the individual can't turn around and provide a written request at that moment. And the intent is to protect the department, that if someone inadvertently did not
Right.
take it off of the agenda as requested, that makes sense as to why it needs to be in writing, not, oh, I called and talked to so-and-so and they forgot.
No doubt that's bothered you.
And that, I feel that's the intention, so I think that's very important at this point regarding the deferral being in writing. I think that's a technicality, but the 60 days, I think we have to consider that if you do defer it twice, they automatically are approved. It's based on if the 60 days start at that point, or does it start again once those changes were made?
So would anyone on the planning commission like to express their opinion on what you thought you were voting for? When you voted for the deferral in June, was that because they requested it and you were willing to grant them that because there were property disputes? Or were you deferring it because you just didn't want to take any action, even though, you knew we were barreling down to the 60-day limit, and that's just the way it was gonna be, but we didn't know what else to do, so we voted to defer. My impression from that meeting was that you voted to defer because Mr. Gary came and said, hey, it's my property, and you all wanted to make sure that that was straight before you moved forward. I mean, that was a great decision, I thought, let's make sure all that's straight before we move forward with any kind of decision. That was my understanding of the deferral that happened that night, not, I don't wanna take any action, and just vote, not just vote to defer and just hope that nothing happens and we'll let 60 days happen and let it.
I don't think that's ever occurred, and I've been here many, many years, and at no time have we ever done it for the sake of not having to face the issue.
That was my impression of what happened as well.
And I've been here a long time, and that never has that happened, to my knowledge.
I'm sorry.
One of the two of them.
I'll be quick.
Is action limited to approve or disapprove?
Well, Well, I guess you could defer it, but I don't
Well,
recommend that.
Deferral's
but
not even
as
in the
far as the
ordinances.
60 days goes.
Yes, sir.
Like,
You're
if
pregnant
there's
with that or
action-
you're not. I mean, it would be better for the commission to take an action up or down.
Well, we've got a motion on the floor in a second after we have the conversation.
What's the motion for? Which,
To approve, to ratify the 60 days, according to state law. That's what the motion is on the floor.
What 60
Is that
days?
correct, Mr. Burns?
but with the problem is, when did that 60 days
Yes.
begin? And
That's-
is the 60 day, when they agreed verbally, and it entered the minutes, did that become in writing? Because technically,
Well, then if you.
it's recorded.
That's a valid position, if you feel that way, then you should vote
I
against it.
understand you can argue all these points from day one, and who said what, Mr. Derrick did agree to it, and we didn't have something written. The fact is, it's over 60 days, you know, that's the problem, you over 60 days, so,
But it would
that's
automatically
what
be
their,
over 60
Without any deferrals.
that's what their attorney is saying, and
When does the 60 days
I
normally
just don't
start?
see, I just don't,
Your ordinance says it starts from the date of the service.
So our ordinance states that it starts on submittal.
Right,
Our ordinance states that if we have a deferral, which I understand your side,
right,
but it has to be in writing.
right.
And the state law says if they don't get an answer from us within 60 days,
You have to approve.
you have to approve.
So,
Am I reading all the
Yes,
laws,
yes.
saying that correctly?
yeah.
From
I would argue, I will say it's a close question. Kathy's
From April
right.
14th.
You could construe their consent on the record for the deferral to be
I guess
consent.
That's
the
in
point I'd
writing.
like
It's
to
in
make,
writing. They put it in writing.
Mr. Moody is, going forward, if we don't approve this in some way or fashion tonight, the developer move forward with a lawsuit against the parish, okay?
Right.
That's my thing.
And if we take no action at all, that's guaranteed.
That's what's gonna
This
happen.
will get their plat approved.
And the fact is, that if the very fact tonight that the developer is, he's current with the new ordinance, and so I asked this question last time to their attorney, what's the point? If they already agreed to do it under new ordinance, why prolong the agony? It was approved last time, I mean, it was okay last time, now it's okay this time, so what's the point of keep going on with it?
Well, that would be your next motion.
It's not.
Well, at this point, with the motion that exists, it is totally in regard to the 60 days, which, again, we could argue that it is in writing in the sense that it's in the minutes, it was agreed upon, and it was, you know, so technically, it is on the record. So therefore, the 60 day shouldn't apply in that regard, because they agreed not to, and they requested a deferral twice, so in each effort, I don't think it should apply that we fall within the 60 days, and that's that.
I don't think Mr. Derrick requested that. I asked a question, was he okay with that, and he said he was okay with it. But I don't think he verbally asked.
Attorney or
But it's still agreed upon that he knew that the 60 days couldn't apply.
Please, Ms. Nato, go ahead, you got that.
All right, I'm ready. So, just hearing some of this comment, last month, it was not required to be in writing, now it is. 60 days didn't apply, now it does. So Burns just said we needed to be consistent with our application of the ordinances. What are we gonna do here? And I agree with Mr. Burns, there is gonna be a lawsuit by the developer if we don't approve it. But, you know, I think we know there's gonna be a lawsuit from the citizens as well. So, my argument to y'all, based upon what I've heard here tonight, there's a much better argument that, you know, there's a much better chance that the citizens have more substance to their argument than a developer. I mean, it's pretty darn obvious to me, but. So what I care about, what I've been talking to you about, I'm gonna update you on the school impact, which is what I can't get over here. So last month, I told you, we were over capacity at Front Settlement. We got 26 new students that came in the system this past week. That's a 5.6% increase over last month. Assuming they do that, that will put us at 9.68% over capacity for the current year. No school impact study with any substance can say that the impact of nearly a 700 lot subdivision would not be totally overwhelm this school. I'm fully confident that this data would survive the strict scrutiny that Mr. Moody mentioned by the AG rule. And that's all I got.
Mr. Taylor, would you concede, let Mr. Hart speak for a minute?
I won't be long. All y'all don't know, I'm Jeff Hart, I'm councilman for District 1. I honestly feel that the intent of the 60-day law is to keep planning commissions from prolonging and not giving the developers an answer. I feel that because the developer asked to defer this, that the 60-day clock should not start until he presented his final plat to y'all. So I think that's a valid question for them to ask, which plat are y'all approving? There's obviously 3 different plats here. So we need to know which one are you approving? And if you're approving this final one that meets all the ordinances, they should still be on a 60-day clock. I just feel that's the way, and I think we really need to look at what the intent of the 60 days was. Because if not, as a developer, I could come in here and defer. Could you defer it? Could you defer it? And I could just ride out 60 days and make a development however I want. So I think that question needs to be answered. Which development are y'all approving tonight?
I think it's been established, we're approving the latest.
No.
Am I correct?
No.
You're not standing at the podium, please. We can't hear.
No, am I correct?
It's for, according to our attorney, that's what we're talking about is the
Yeah,
latest.
the only, that's the
The
only
latest
thing
plat
that
that
plan that we
was
are
submitted.
considering, is the one that was introduced last.
Correct. Same one we voted on last time. Mr. Adams.
I got a question with this. What designate an official submittal to start the clock? Now, you know, you got your regulation ordinances, and we plan, whatever the term is, ordinance about 60 days. Then you've got ordinances telling what needs to be submitted, what needs like to sign. It has to have certain things, certain height. So as I see it, as long as that sign was wrong, the clock can start. Last month, I came in and got a copy of a plot dated, stamp dated June 16th. And the date on the plot was April 2022. And the phone number on the plot was the same number that was unanswerable when the sign was up on my property before. I was told they were gonna submit a new plot because there was some changes. I came in on July 12th and got a copy of this plot. And I don't know if that constituted official submittal or not, but this was for official submittal for the 18th day of the month before. Now this plot has July 2022 and the new phone number. Also, in the submittal for on the 16th, I got a copy of the Form 20, and with a signature, instead of saying owner, developer, whatever the term, it says representative. So is this official submittal? You get online, and it has the Form 20, it has the owner, developer, subdivider. So if they can provide their own form, is this an official submittal when they use the form you have? So my question is, what constitutes an official submittal to start the clock? How accurate does it have to be? I mean, we're talking about following regulations, and I agree with following regulations. He's gonna use all the time. My point is, did the clock ever start until the recent submittal for this meeting?
Well, same answer I gave you. The state law doesn't say when that clock starts. Your ordinance says it starts when the submission of the preliminary plat, other material is submitted. Council shall have 60 days to approve, disapprove, or defer. And it also says all such requests for deferrals or agenda cancellation shall be in written form. But it's a close call.
But it does go on and say that Form
We
20
argued
has to be
last
part
time
of
that
it.
it was a new submittal because of all the new form.
It describes what has to be submitted.
Yeah, that's part of what has to be submitted.
And Form 20, and the Form 20 they submitted was not Form 20 that's online. So does that make it an official or unofficial submittal? To me, it's not an official submittal, so it wasn't.
Chad, when you re-reviewed this and they submitted, you didn't charge them a new fee, this was a revision to the plat that you reviewed?
We basically treated it as a new submittal because they had changes. I mean, not necessarily a new submittal, I may say the wrong word, but we basically had to kind of go through the checklist again because things have changed. So we check it all again.
But clarify for us, if it was a new submittal, they'd have had to supply another check and all of that other information that you already had, just not the revised information.
Yeah, I mean, all we needed really is the plat at that time because the 20, whatever forms she's talking about were already covered. So we just needed the plat and whatever changes were made from there, and we checked it with our checklist anyway.
So when they submit, wait, what did you just say? So when they submitted the 20, they didn't need to submit that new 20, just a new plat?
They submitted a new form, the 28, or
Right.
whatever he's talking about,
Right.
Natalie, and we don't really get those forms, we get the plat, is what we're worried about, because that's what I'm reviewing, according to the ordinance. But I think they did submit a new form at the time, with the new date on it, but,
What
it
would
came
that
with
new
the plat.
date be?
6/16/22.
Yeah, this form, they got it labeled Form 26, 16, 22, but the bottom they got representative rather than on developer, so, I mean, is that an official form? So is it an official submittal?
Go ahead.
All the other submissions, shouldn't they just be updates of the original submission and not a new submission each time they submit an update?
That's certainly, that's the argument the developer made.
But there's a certain percentage that
That's the
that it
question.
has
Well,
to
that
come back to
20%
us.
means that you have to bring it back to the council. Not, doesn't say anything, I don't think, about, it has to be resubmitted.
Right, that's usually further down the process.
You could argue they needed a new 20 days
So
because the
we
ownership
talked about the
changed.
60 days, I think the 60 days started at the original submission.
Well, my comment to that would be, that if the 60 days is really to give you the time to evaluate it, but a fair time, if we're given something, 45 days later, that really technically means we only have 15 days. Well, if we have once a month meetings, if they resubmitted changes and we have to evaluate that, I feel as though it would only be fair to the people evaluating it and all parties involved that that's the 60-day time frame, because you had to basically start over.
I got a question, first, my information also, the other planning commissioners, on the submittals, when a developer brings you a plat like Malari, what do they bring you, what documents besides the original preliminary site plan? Do they bring you 20 and 28? Is there any other documents they bring to you? That's it? That's the three. Now,
Picture
from
of
the time that you receive those documents until the time you present it to the planning commission, how many times can they change the preliminary site plan? I know the review engineers look at it and see some problems, and they'll go back and forth with developers over and over and over until it's resolved. What about the 20 and 28? Can it be changed until it comes to this commission? How many times can 20 and 28 be changed without it being called a new submittal?
Well, we are in the process now reaching out to the council to define that. We want our submittals to be defined on exactly when, we get these things, whether it's, we're fixing to go through, as I mentioned to all of you guys, 3 stages to approve a subdivision. stage one, which will be our review at our office. Stage two is when you get an opportunity to speak like we've been doing here for the last few weeks. And stage three is when you got the engineer is gonna have everything in front of him, so you hopefully can make an intelligent decision on what you wanna do. There's not gonna be any deferrals anymore.
And all
So,
comments will
it's
be
really not
addressed
the-
before.
All comments will be addressed before that stage three hits his table.
It's really not defined in what is a new submittal until it comes to the planning commission, am I correct? On saying
Well,
that?
that's what we're hoping, Mr. Gerald, with this new
But right now,
proposal.
right now.
I'm gonna defer that to you. I don't know. I mean, we've been talking about this.
I've
I'm
been
just
hearing
as
that for
confused
3 months,
as
and I'm
everybody is.
I want clarification, and I know they won't want
And I
to.
think,
I imagine you'll get that, but it'll probably be somebody in a black robe.
it's just when you get back to the full
I
intent.
don't know.
I'm just-
Hey, come on, guys, one person at a time, please, Mr. Chris.
No, I mean, it's a question I can't give you a clear answer to, Mr. Burns. State law doesn't define it, your ordinance says when it's first submitted. And there is ability to defer, the defer must be considered to, and it hold to the letter of the ordinance, that should be in writing. So, is the writing enough because they said so on the record and they reduced that to minutes? That's for you to decide, it's a valid vote for you to make.
So, I still got I want clarification in my mind on the preliminary site plan. It can be changed many times.
Yes, sir.
By the planning department and a review engineer and a developer.
We've always.
And every time that they change the preliminary site plan, that's not a use submittal. Now, if they can change 20 and 20A several times, that's not a use submittal, am I correct?
No, sir, but what Sam is saying is that we're working on a proposal for the council to consider that we will define submittal date
But as of right now.
to the first time.
It's not defined as a use submittal.
Right. We're gonna check, we'll make this a lot more clear going
It
forward.
is not a new submittal.
But at the same time, the reality of what the 60 days, the intent of it is, it's not, if it's changed 10 times and then we get the last time and there's only 3 more days in the 60 days, it wasn't as though we were putting it off, which was apparently the intent of it, was that we were putting the developer off. Changes took place that 60 days shouldn't be in place because of all those changes.
And we hope
And that's, I mean, that would be the logical approach to it, and when they verbally understood, the 60 days is not gonna apply, I think that ended that as an option, and if we didn't get till the third plat to what we're even evaluating, how can the 60 days of the first apply, or every person that came in here would defer it twice and it'd be done? And, I mean, that would be how it took place, there would be no decision to make, they would just come up with reasons to stall, basically, and the 60 days would pass.
But until this planning commission approves the preliminary site plan, the developer can change it. They did it.
Of
They-
course,
And
but
that's
in
not
the
a use,
sense of-
that's not defined as a use submittal on the ordinance, there is no defined ordinance on that. They can change this, they can change 20 and 28 until this planning commission approves it. Then if they come back and change this, that's a use submittal.
Right, but they did agree to not, and I think it's unfortunate that they're gonna come on the backside of it, and
That's how they
like
all.
I said, and multiple occasions, we tried to accommodate so that minor things can be taken care of, and then now it suddenly becomes an advantage, and they wanna take advantage of that, when in fact, we were allowing those things, and we could have just denied it, and we didn't. And so we deferred it on good faith, and good faith that the 60 days was not gonna apply. And then now to use that is unfortunate.
Mr. Dale, if you don't mind, could you wrap it up so Scott can talk before we run out of minutes?
Address this, Joe, the first couple of times, your ordinances talk about the sign and what has to be on the sign. And the sign was actually the wrong piece of property, and it's not, didn't have the right information. in my opinion, that's not an official submittal because the sign is wrong.
Okay, that's enough.
I mean, I don't see how you, I mean, if the sign's wrong and it says you didn't have anything to vote on, yes or no, so it was a moot point, really. So to me, the clock, I mean, the 60 days should have started after they got the sign right, at least.
Sit down, you can't talk. Go ahead.
All right, first thing, obviously there isn't any verbiage that says what a submittal is. There also is some verbiage that are in the ordinance says that a deferral is an action. So there isn't any, they're saying that they have, no action was taken, a deferral is an action. So 60 days should have never been really clicking by on anything. A double payment of fees is not a record of a second submittal, because that's not fair to a developer that every time that he has a little mistake that he needs to pay double fees. He should, did y'all refund him his money the first time? That way he could use that same money to pay it back? Double payment of fees, that's not even a good argument. What's happening here is a developer has put before, the developer's engineer has put together some information before you guys to take action on that has not been accurate. And if you go forward with this 60-day time thing, these engineers are being rewarded for not putting good work out. Because there's still problems with the plat. The plat is still not based off of a survey. There's all types of things. If you pulled it up, I could show you a bunch of them, but I don't want to waste my time on all of that. Because there is no verbiage that this is a submittal. And the other thing, a new submittal. The other thing is, every time that there's ordinances that are gray and it requires interpretation, it's always construed to be interpreted for the developer. I have never once seen the planning commission or the council just yet interpret gray area ordinances in favor of the people and the public. Why is that? Why? You're there to protect the people and the public. There was numerous things that were wrong with this submittal that it could have been denied multiple times, and there still is. So we respectfully request that you vote this 60-day thing down. Maybe you make a motion and deny it. Let them start over. Let them do the right. They need to present the right information for you guys to make a good decision on. Thank you.
I'm just gonna point out a few things for clarification. There's a question as to what submittal is being considered by the planning commission. The Valera submitted their first application on May 4th. Came to hearing on June the 1st, and there were numerous violations by the public that were addressed. The commission heard all those. At that particular time, I think that Valera agreed, look, we don't have our ducks in a row, let's ask for deferral, we're gonna put this off, let's get our stuff straight. They specifically requested on numerous cases during that particular meeting, and were granted the deferral by the committee. And regardless of whether you wanna say that it was in writing at that particular time or not, it was placed in the minutes, and that's a hard copy of their deferral being granted by the commission. Secondly, is that if that deferral was granted on the June 1st application, under section 3 of what it's 125.13B3 states that any cancellation deferral requested by an ODS shall be deemed as consent to an extension of the time period contained therein. It does not state how long that particular time frame is. It says that 60 days is extended by their request for deferral. Therefore, they had that particular time frame was closed as of the 60 days that they're arguing for now. By their own request is that they asked for the 60 days, for the deferral and to stop the clock on that 60-day time frame. As stated before by many people here, it was asked whether that 60 days was going to be imposed. They said no. It was asked by numerous people. And secondly, is that if we're still dealing with the first application of May 4th that was heard and deferred on June 1st, is that there was a brand new, we're not talking about new, amendments to the initial application, what have you, that was brought before the planning commission. What was brought up was a brand new Form 20 that was supplied to the commission for after they did the things that were done and proposed as errors in the first meeting of June 1st. They came back, supposedly corrected the signage issue, supposedly corrected their plat, where there may still be some disagreement with that. But then on June 16th, is that they submitted a brand new application after all those things were done. It was not an appendix or a supplement to the initial application, as we talked about earlier, is the way that things normally are done. This was a brand new application that was brought before the planning commission, by Valera. So, with that said, is that number one, is that, and I'm pointing out things not for argument's sake, is these things are facts. Number one, the May 4th submission was deferred on the June 1st meeting. As of their deferral, the statute clearly says is that a cancellation or deferral request by ODS shall be deemed as consent to an extension of the time period contained therein. They cannot come in, they acquiesce in the extension of that 60-day period merely by asking for the deferral. If it's placed in writing, it's minutes, if that's what the definition that's deemed to be the correct manner by the planning commission, then that deferral was in place, then that 60-day time period was extended. Even if that was not the case, is that they come back after they correct numerous mistakes that were brought to light during that June 1st meeting, and file a second entirely new application on June the 16th. That time frame has not run, 60 days has not run since that time. So we are still within the 60 days, within that particular time period, and the council does not need to rely upon the Attorney General's opinion, the 60-day opinion, the state law, what have you. The state law is contained in our ordinance. 60 days says that the commission has to take action within 60 days or it's approved. What we're saying is that the application that they submitted was deferred, if you want to accept that particular argument.
You're 3 minutes over the 15 minutes,
If not-
and we're not talking about anything new.
Agreed.
We're talking about the same thing we talked about for the last 7.5 hours.
Then would be, for clarification purposes,